Ladies and gentlemen, we are Carolina conservatives preachers with a punch, and I'll tell you, I'm punching by myself today because our esteemed colleague Alan, the pastor himself, Alan Mashburn, is out campaigning on the campaign trail with for Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, and we definitely want him to continue to do that. But today we are going to be launching into even more information about this unfolding set of events that has been occurring with the Guilford County Board of Education and what has happened with denying Michael Logan a seat on the school board representing District 3 there, and then the Democrats on that board handing that chair over to Bill Goebel. Now, just to give you a little bit of information, background information, we're going to get into that in just a minute, but today I have with me a representative, someone from District 3 who has been disenfranchised because of this action. A resident of District 3, Maria Adams, who is going to be coming on and giving us her perspective, some of the things that she saw. She was in the room where it all happened. And of course, this is not Hamilton. We're not doing the musical itself, but she was in the room where it all went down and has been also been engaged with some of the things that has transpired since then. We're going to get her perspective on that in just a few minutes. But I just want to say, first of all, Maria, welcome to Carolina Conservatives Preachers with a Punch.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate you having me on here. As you mentioned, yes, I am a resident of District 3, and I'm a friend of Michael Logan's as well. So I've been following what's going on with the open school board, the vacant school board seat, since the very beginning, since actually before even Pat Tillman vacated the seat, because I was aware that that was a possible option when Mr. Tillman was running for county commissioner. So I have been very much involved with this process since the very beginning, because I am an informed voter and I'm an active resident in my community. And so I like to know what's going on that affects my family and me. So thank you for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to share what I've experienced and many other residents in District 3 are experiencing.
Absolutely. So just to give everybody just an encapsulated perspective of what has happened, of course, we had Michael Logan, who was lawfully, legally selected by the Guilford County GOP, their executive committee, selected him because Pat Tillman was a Republican. So per the rules, per state rules, per statute, that then Pat Tillman, his replacement, is selected by the GOP. Now, let's just be clear that this is not an earth-shattering seat, by the way. You know, this board was 6 Democrats to 3 Republicans anyhow. So this is not a seat that would sway the board in an entirely different direction. So they decided that they were not going to seat Michael Logan because they didn't like some of his mean tweets that he had sent out, or his mean Facebook posts where we all have the right to criticize those in authority, to criticize our government. That's our right. Our forefathers fought for that right. And so he did that. And so they didn't like it too good. So they weren't going to seat him. Of course, he was a teacher as well. And so they forced him to resign his position, ultimately for them to not seat him. So John Hardister, a representative of Guilford County in the state legislature in North Carolina, helped to change the law that they were using to block Michael Logan so that Michael could be seated. They decided that then their attorney, Jill Wilson, who would then interpret the law how she saw fit and not seat Michael Logan, but instead seated Bill Goebel, who they had already been meeting with in secret to get him to come on board, who is supposedly a Republican, who has come in and taken this seat from Michael Logan, who is now without a seat and who is without a teaching job. And it was a great teacher, by the way. So that's sort of it encapsulated. So let's just begin. Let's just pick up right there. The night where this happened, Maria, walk us through the events that sort of transpired and that occurred the night that they decided not to seat Michael and instead seated Bill Goebel.
Sure. So again, I've been involved with multiple aspects of how the school board seat was appointed, from attending the GOP executive committee meetings to the school board meetings and watching several things online. So the night that Mr. Logan was to be seated on the Guilford County School Board, the GOP, the Republican Party, did receive a confirmation that a judge was going to be on site. So they were told that a judge would be on site to seat the representative there. So they inferred, when I say they, the Guilford County Board of Education, or whoever it is that speaks for the Board of Education at Guilford County Schools, inferred to the Republican Party that Michael would be seated that night. So there was a pretty good crowd that came out to support him. And when I say crowd, I mean that family, friends, Republican members of the party came out. So it was a nice large gathering there to support Mr. Logan. I also want to mention that Mr. Logan's father came in from out of town, and I believe it's something like a 3-hour round trip drive, that his elderly father came out there to support his son, to stand by his son while his son is being sworn in to that seat. His father brought the family Bible, which was encased in a beautiful wooden box. So they were truly prepared to, Mr. Logan, the Republican Party, Mr. Logan's family, they were all prepared to have Mr. Logan seated. So he had his family there, his friends there.
There was no indication at all.
No, there was none. There was no indication that there were going to be any shenanigans, even though the board had illegally denied Mr. Logan his rightful seat, his lawful seat. Correct. Since November, or rather December. That's when he was supposed to have been sworn in, is in December. But the board denied him his legal lawful seat. But at this point, once Hardister had that law or worked on the North Carolina General Assembly to get that law passed, we thought everything was going to be settled. And so we all went into that meeting. Now, again, from my perspective, when I arrived at the board meeting, at the building, the outside room, the room that you gather in, the lobby, I suppose, before you go into the boardroom, was filling up very quickly. And I wanted to make sure I got a good seat. So I went to the door. I went right up to the front, and Bill Goebel and his wife happened to be standing there. And because I thought that Bill Goebel was there to support Michael, and plus I didn't have anything against Bill Goebel at that time, because he had not indicated that he was colluding with the Democrats. So, I was having a nice conversation with Mr. Goebel, and he introduced me to his wife, and there was, several other Democrats and Republicans. There were just different people standing by the front door, and we were just all having a conversation, and it seemed like everything was just going well. So we filed into the room, we all got sat, and they started the board meeting. And as soon as Jill Wilson showed the first slide, and you'll see that in the footage I think you're going to be sharing. As soon as she showed that first slide, to go into her explanation of the new statute, I knew immediately they were not going to seat him. And Mr. Logan happened to be sitting right beside me in the audience. I was on the front row, and he was sitting right beside me, and I whispered to him, I said, Michael, I'm afraid that they're not going to be seating you. And he said, oh, no, it's going to work. Because he also believed it. He's like, oh, no, they're going to seat me. And the second slide, I was like, no, they're not going to seat you. And so
ladies and gentlemen, I am here to explain to you the legal status and process for the District 3 vacancy. So let's begin. You'll remember that Pat Tillman, who served District 3, resigned on December 4th, 2022. His resignation was delivered to Chairman Hayes. He formally announced his resignation on December 4th, effective 8 a.m., December 5th, 2022. Remember that date because it's an important date. At the time of Mr. Tillman's resignation, we were governed in our organizational structure by State Law 2013-361. Some of you, if you've been around a while, will remember that law is what made us partisan and drew new districts and contained this language, Section 6, vacancies on the new, because you were reconstituted, Guilford County Board of Education shall be filled by a vote of the majority of the remaining members of the board present and voting for the remaining unexpired term. So you remember we have had, over the last little while, some conversations about that provision. It also said, vacancies shall be filled as provided in GS 115C 37D. And it also required, in instances where a board member being replaced was elected from a single-member district, the board must approve a resident from the district when the vacancy exists. So this was the law as of the time that Mr. Tillman resigned. So let's see what 115C37D provided. There it is. As you can see, it doesn't provide anything. Now, 115C37.1 has 4 sections. There were 3 other sections. One section said that the remaining members of the Board of Education appoint the replacement. Another said that in the event that it's a partisan election and it was an at-large election or there was no districting, the executive committee nominates. And then the other section is the section we're about to talk about. So GS 115C 37.1C is the provision that you have been hearing from the Republicans they believe applied to the filling of this seat. It provides a method of selection of a seat to replace a districted member of a political party, which is what you had. Whenever only the qualified voters of less than the entire county will eligible to vote for the member whose seat is vacant, and the appointing authority, which is you, must accept the recommendation only if the county executive committee restricted voting to committee members who represent precincts, all or part of which are within the territory of the vacating board member. So both the majority vote of you and that process, well, something in 115C 37.1 applied at the time of the vacancy. Obviously, there was a lot of confusion. If you recall, all parties, the Republican parties, the legislators, various people consulted the School of Government. Everyone agreed there was a conflict in the provision. At the time of the vacancy, you got this letter, December 7th, 2022. Pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 115C 37.1, notice it doesn't do A, B, C, or D. The members of the Executive Committee of the Guilford County Republican Party within District 3 met, chose, and nominated the replacement. Met, chose, and nominated the District 3 members of the Executive Committee. December 21, which was after you've had the first consideration, we have strictly followed the appropriate statutory procedures to appoint Mr. Logan, abiding by the timing requirement of subsection B and the district voting requirement of subsection C. January 3rd letter. Mr. Logan's nomination was originally made by vote of a duly constituted members of the county's party in executive committee from District 3. 3/16/23, a new law is enacted. It interestingly enough, it takes us completely out of 37.1, totally, and only rewrites the local law, which was, remember that 2013-361? That's a local act. That's not part of the partisan election statute that is in the general statute book. So you won't find that in your book. This is what it says. It rewrites that section that we just talked about. Vacancies on the Guilford County Board of Education shall be filled as follows. Section 1. And you see the strike through when, I know you guys probably have read some legislation, but just for anyone at home who hasn't, when the legislators amend an existing law, that's what that strike through is. It shows what's changed. Vacancies on the, so they don't call it the new Guilford County Board of Education. Now you guys are old hat. Vacancies on the Guilford County Board of Education shall be filled as follows. The individual appointed to fill the vacancy must be a qualified voter in Guilford County. In instances where the vacating board member being replaced was elected from within a single member district, the individual appointed shall be a resident of the district where the vacancy exists. If the vacating board member was elected as a nominee of a political party, and just to remind everybody, Mr. Tillman was the Republican nominee, so that provision applies, then the board shall consult with the county executive committee of that political party. The county political party executive committee shall provide the name of the individual qualified in accordance with subdivisions 1 and 2 of this section in writing within 30 days of the occurrence of the vacancy. So you'll remember the occurrence of the vacancy was December 5th. 30 days, within 30 days of the occurrence of the vacancy. If the county political party executive committee recommends an individual in accordance with this subdivision, that individual shall take the oath of office at the next regular board meeting. If the county executive committee of the political party of which the vacating board member is a member fails to provide the name of an individual qualified in accordance with subdivisions 1 and 2 of this section in writing to the superintendent of schools within 30 days of the occurrence of the vacancy, the board may fill the vacancy by vote of a majority of the remaining board members present and voting in the next regular meeting. So where are we? We received this letter from the Republican Party. Michael Logan is the choice of the members of the Guilford County Republican Party Executive Committee from District 3. If you remember, District 3 is no longer a component of the appointment because we went out of 337.1 and became part of this local act that requires the entire executive committee to appoint a replacement, not the District 3 members. So as you see, and remember what the language was in the letter that transmitted the appointment to you. They were nominated, selected, and I can't remember what the third word was, chosen by District 3 members. So as of this writing, the executive committee certainly has not voted or conveyed to you a nominee. If a nominee is not present, then you have to select. You have, because it's been more than 30 days from the occurrence of the vacancy, then the process of electing would fall to you. Now let's talk about why this is important, because I think it's very important. If you don't have a valid appointment, you don't have a valid board member. It's that simple. If you don't vote and the process is wrong, you don't have a valid board member. So when I started looking at this, I called Bob Joyce at the School of Government at Chapel Hill, who has been our guide throughout this process. Bob Joyce agrees that the executive committee at this point has not made an appointment and we do not have a valid appointment. And that means that the board has the authority and the duty to replace this person. Here's what has to happen. They have to be a qualified voter and they must live in District 3.
And so we all saw it coming, and it just broke my heart, honestly. It broke my heart because I thought, how awful is this board? And when I say the board, I don't mean all of them. I mean, Chrissy Pratt and Linda Welburn knew nothing about this. They were completely blindsided. Mm-hmm. So I'm not trying to put blame on a certain political party, but quite frankly, it is all the Democrats that colluded with Mr. Goebel to do this to Michael Logan. And I thought, how awful are they doing this? That they inferred that they were going to seat him, and then they turn around and Jill Wilson is doing this. Jill Wilson is the school board's attorney, by the way.
Right.
She's doing this presentation to explain why they're not going to seat him. And my heart just sunk for Mr. Logan. I thought, that's just horrible. They've already slandered him. They've told pernicious lies about him. They've caused him basically to lose his job. They've
called him a racist at one point.
Right. They've desecrated his character, and he's done nothing wrong. He's a good man.
He taught for that school district for 26 years.
Yes.
He is a public servant who has given his life for students, a teacher. Who else would you not? I mean, that is the kind of person we would want on the school board, is a teacher in that school district who has given his life for service to those children. And you said something else, Maria, that I don't want our audience to be lost on at all. It's very important that everybody understand two things. Number one, prior to this, they illegally refused to seat Michael Logan, which then everybody in District 3 was disenfranchised for months, was not given a voice in all the proceedings, important proceedings that happened for months. They were not given a voice. That alone, the parents and the community of District 3 could sue the school district for, just for that alone, because they refused to do that. That doesn't even take into effect that they could sue the school district because their voice, their will has been overridden by a lawless, out of control Democrat Party in Guilford County, and that is in charge of Guilford County schools. And so they have been overridden entirely. Their voice has been overridden. And I also want to make this clear, too, that Jill Wilson is the attorney for the school district, who is a leftist, by the way. And so it is quite conspicuous when a leftist board attorney and leftist board knows what's going on before everybody else does. It's not necessarily the thing that school boards should be doing. So I want to make that very clear too. So when you're seeing all this go down, what happened as soon as Jill Wilson dropped the hammer and said that it is now your duty as the school board to select and seat someone? How did all that play out? Did it look like they had already colluded and had this all in the works long before they ever made that statement?
Well, looking back, yes. But again, because I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, and I try to just trust that people are going to do the right thing. It all happened so fast. I didn't see it that way at the beginning until I went back honestly, I had a conversation with Mr. Goebel the next day, which I will tell you about.
Sure.
And after I went back and watched the video that GCS posts, they put all of their board meetings on their YouTube website. And I went back and watched that so I could have a better understanding of what happened. And so immediately after Wilson presented the slide presentation, she recommended that the board, I can't remember exactly what she said, but what I do remember is that Dina Hayes, who is the chair, Dina Hayes Green, she's the chair. She, excuse me, I'm gonna restate that. Bellamy Small, which is one of the board members, and she's a Democrat board member. She motioned to seat or to nominate Bill Goebel for the seat. And then there was a lot of commotion. Then somebody seconded. I don't even remember who seconded it. Then Dina, Miss Hayes, then said, okay, something about, unless there are any questions, we'll vote on it. And before anybody had any time to ask any questions, especially Chrissy Pratt and Linda Welburn, who were completely blindsided and didn't know any of this was happening, they didn't get an opportunity to have discussion. They didn't get an opportunity to ask a single question because they went immediately into voting.
I can't talk over that.
Go ahead.
Did you make your motion?
Okay, do you want me to do it again?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Madam Chair, I make a motion that the board consider for the District 3 vacancy, Mr. William J. Bill Goebel for the District 3 position.
Second. All right, all those in favor, if there are no questions, please use your electronic devices to vote. Kim Irby has cast her vote as yes. All right, that passes by a vote of 7-2. I'm sorry, 5-2. Kim Irby's is, can you push hers too? So that passes by a vote of 6-2.
And then, of course, the Democrats voted, I guess, 6-2 to seat Bill Goebel. He and his wife went up to the front. They were sworn in. Before that, Jill Wilson got up to introduce the judge. And when she did, and you'll have to watch the footage, I guess you'll show it here.
We will show it.
She was like a giggling schoolgirl. It was just despicable and appalling, her behavior after the board members voted. It was as if she was just elated that her plan went exactly the way she wanted it to go. And I'm not saying this is her plan. I'm just saying that she looked as if it was that way. She was just giddy as she could be. And I actually didn't know that she was giddy about it until I went back and watched the footage, because I could only see the back of her head from where I was sitting. But once you watch the video, you can see the front.
Attorney Wilson, can you guide us through the process, please?
Board members, we are so honored today, and I've been anxiously awaiting this day. I've asked her before, and she hasn't been available. I'm so thrilled that we are lucky enough today to have Chief District Court Judge Teresa Vincent here to do the honors of swearing in our new board member. Judge Vincent is the first African-American Chief District Court Judge in Guilford County. She has spent her life in public service as a district attorney and a district court judge. She was recognized by she's recognized by the Elon Law School as the outstanding
Godless, woke, self-serving.
Well, let's just state facts. Facts are there was a PowerPoint presentation that was planned.
Yes.
I have been in that before. PowerPoint presentations have to be turned in to the school board long ahead of time in a normal basis. I've had to do that myself, maybe even weeks or months ahead of time. So there was a PowerPoint presentation planned. It didn't just automatically miraculously appear. Someone wrote that. And so we can only assume that Jill wrote that. And then there was a piece of paper that Diane Bellamy Small was reading from.
Correct.
That didn't just miraculously appear either. There had to have been some pre-planning and some coordination that had occurred. So whoever did that coordination, we can only assume, based on Bill Goebel's own statements of who was involved in the secret meetings that in which he participated before the board meeting, we can only assume that there were that Dina Hayes and Jill Wilson, who were in those meetings, had some coordination that was going on. Am I right on that?
Right. So then they sat Bill Goebel. Okay, so I want to just skip to the day after. So we know what happened. We know that all that happened, and then Bill Goebel was sat, and they went on about their meeting as if nothing happened. Okay, and I stayed there for about another hour or so before I had to head home. Anyway, I emailed Mr. Goebel that evening. And I said, as a resident in District 3 and a constituent, I would like to speak to you about what happened. So he and I went back and forth on email a couple of times, and then he gave me his phone number to call him. And I've spoken to Mr. Goebel before, because he also ran for the Guilford County chairman All right. So he pledged his loyalty, his loyal service to the Guilford County Republican Party when he ran for chairman. And less than 30 days later, he betrayed the Republican Party to collude with the Democrats to take Michael Logan's seat that belonged to Mr. Logan because he was the lawful nominee from the party. Anyway, I spoke to Mr. Goebel the next day and I wanted to find out. Again, I'm given the benefit of the doubt because I don't know. I don't know what really happened up until this point other than being present at that meeting. So I asked him what happened and why did you do this? And a couple things that he said to me, which I'm in the process of writing my official statement. But a couple things that he said to me was, one, he was asked to be at a meeting at Jill Wilson's office, a lunch meeting. And apparently that lunch meeting happened the day of the school board meeting. So that was Tuesday, April the 4th, I believe. So he had a meeting at Jill Wilson's office. Mr. Goebel told me that Jill Wilson showed him that PowerPoint presentation that she presented at the school board meeting later that evening. So that means Mr. Goebel was privy to information prior to the school board having that information or the public having that information. So maybe some members of the school board saw it. I don't know. But I can tell you that Linda Wilburn and Chrissy Pratt never saw that presentation until the night of the school board meeting. So Mr. Goebel, who is currently not on the school board, was presented that information from Jill Wilson at her office. So I asked him, why didn't you tell once you found out that information and you saw what they were up to, why didn't you go to the Republican Party? Why didn't you go to Chairman Meadows and tell him what was going on? And he said to me that he was told to keep it private, keep it secret. And the only person he told was his wife. And then I asked him, I was like, well, why would you even do any of this? And he said, well, the Democrats were absolutely not going to seat Michael no matter what. So it doesn't matter what the law is, they were going to be lawless no matter what. Those were Mr. Goebel's words. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit. So, because I don't have it, obviously, that phone meeting recorded, but I do have a text message and an email of information that was shared between us. And one of that piece of information that was shared between us, because I wanted to clarify who else was at that meeting at Jill Wilson's office. And so I asked Mr. Goebel in a text message, who else attended the meeting at Jill Wilson's office? And he said it was the school board attorney and one board member. And I said, who was the board member? Was it Dina Hayes? And then he confirmed Dina. So Dina Hayes Green, who is the chair of the Guilford County Board of Education, and Jill Wilson had a secret meeting with Bill Goebel to collude on again, thwarting the law and not seat Michael and instead appoint Mr. Goebel onto the school board.
So also to be clear, that scheduling, even though the meeting was scheduled and was held on April 4th for lunch, we're talking about an attorney and a very busy school board member and a business owner in Bill Goebel. Those meetings are not just called on the fly. Those
Right.
are probably scheduled well in advance. So there was an assumption could be made here that perhaps this was a plan long before even April 4th. And
Yes.
so, I wonder if Bill even questioned as to, well, why is the school board chair and the attorney wanting to meet with me on April 4th, which happens to be a school board meeting? And I have a hard time reckoning that or reconciling that that he didn't have any kind of idea what was going on.
Well, according to an article in the Rhino Times, this article is dated April the 7th. So you can go and Google it. You can also show it here on your podcast. And I'm going to read from this article. It says, he said he was told, so he meaning Mr. Goebel, he said he was told before the April 4th school board meeting that he needed to attend the meeting. This was a meeting that was called by school officials. The call came from Guilford County Schools Chief of Staff, Jose Olivia. Excuse me if I pronounced that incorrectly. Furthermore, it says Goebel said he knew. How do you pronounce his name? Oliva? Oliva. Okay. Goebel said he knew Oliva. So he asked, Jose, what's up? I can't tell you, was the response. But late on Monday night, April 3rd, Goebel said he got a call asking him to meet for lunch the next day. The lunch meeting was held at the Brooks Pierce law firm, the firm that employs Guilford County Schools Attorney Jill Wilson. So yes, this was obviously coordinated
Who gave
in advance.
Bill's name to the school board is another question that needs to be answered as well, because I'm sure these are Democrats. They don't keep up, for the most part, keep up with who the Republicans are. Probably wouldn't know who Bill Goebel is, but someone passed this name over to them as, okay, here's someone that would like to be the school board representative here. So I'm curious as to that, which we probably will never find out, but I'm curious as to that as well, of how they got his name to begin with.
Yeah, I wouldn't know that answer. I just know that what I've experienced through attending the meetings, having conversations with Mr. Goebel, having conversations with Mr. Logan, obviously having conversations with the Republican Party. I'm an involved member, and I can just say that regardless of all of that, just as a mother, a parent, a member of my community, a resident in District 3, a child who has a student in Guilford County Schools, to witness how this school board treats their employees, because Mr. Logan was a teacher, to see how they treat them. And I mean, speaking of, Nathan, you were an employee of Guilford County Schools at one time, and I saw how they treated you as well.
Yep.
But to see how they treat their teachers, how if you have any kind of independent thought at all, that you're going to be ostracized, you're going to be slandered, you're going to be bullied and harassed. That's why a lot of teachers don't speak out. I have a sister that's a teacher in Guilford County Schools, and she says she's experienced the same things. So to watch how this school board, stands behind diversity, equity, and inclusion, but yet when it comes to anybody that has a different kind of thought process, a different mindset, a different idea than their cult religion of DEI, then you're going to be completely ostracized. And that includes their teachers, parents, students, community members, lawmakers. It doesn't matter. And so that's what I witnessed, and that's what I've experienced. And it's really, I'm trying to use kind words, but it's really disheartening. It's really appalling, and it's despicable.
So
they've acted.
Mr. Goebel has said that, I mean, you're a Christian, but he has said that he felt like this was God nudging him to do this. He also said that he felt like God was nudging him to be the chair of the GOP. How does that make you feel? Do you feel like this was the act of a just God?
Well, yes. So let me explain that, because I've shared that with you before, Nathan. When Mr. Goebel was running for chairman of the Guilford County Republican Party, he sent out an email to the delegates along with a video that's a YouTube video. So again, that's something that you can share if you want to. And he said in his written text, as well as on the video, that he felt God nudging him to run for chairman. And he said that something about God was nudging him to run for chairman. And I thought, well, that's really nice. He's feeling a calling, and so he's going to step up to the plate. Well, he didn't win that seat by a long shot, and he was already vying for the school board seat because he was having these conversations with the executive committee, or rather the chairman of the Guilford County Republican Party. So he was already vying for something. And then when he got appointed to the school board and got sworn in, they did a couple of videos. Guilford County Schools did a couple of videos introducing the school board member. Of course, they would have never done that for Mr. Logan, but they did that for Mr. Goebel. And so I saw it on their Instagram. And again, Mr. Goebel invoked God's name to say, well, I felt a nudging from God to run for school board seat. And that's where, again, when I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, that's where it really changed my perception of him, because he invoked God's name when he ran for chairman, and then he invoked God's name when he basically stole a school board seat. And I'm not trying to say that God didn't nudge him to do these things. I obviously don't have any idea what God's telling Mr. Goebel. And I never know. We don't ever really know God's true intention. But it just really took me for surprise, because I was like, I can't imagine that God would open the door to Jill Wilson's office so that he could collude with people that have already broken the law and betray a party that he pledged a loyalty to just 30 days earlier. And he's keeping it all secret. And between the time that this happened in early April to now, here it is a month later, he's changed his story a couple of times. And I'm just like, God, is that how you work things out? I mean, I can't imagine I can't imagine that God would tell me to go do something and then find just, ways for me to do it that are malignant. I mean, I'm not trying to say that I know what God is saying to him, but I just found it I was just taken aback by it. I was just like, that just doesn't sit well with me. That doesn't sit well with my spirit. And I prayed about it, and I was like, that just doesn't sit well with me. And so that's when, I personally made the decision that I can't be supportive of Mr. Goebel being on the school board seat. And so as a resident in District 3, I have to speak out. I have to share with my fellow community members and my neighbors and the people in this area that this was just not right, and that we need to take a stand against it. And so that's what I'm doing. Good. And that's why I'm here on your show.
Absolutely. And we want all of the District 3, we want as many District 3 folks who want to come on as possible to express their feelings about this. We want to ensure that this gets out. I will say to what your point is that, we can't even assume to know what God is saying to other people, but I can assume to know what God has said in his word. And his word has said that light and darkness cannot coexist together, that where there is light, there will be no dark. And so secret deals and things that are done in secret will be brought to light according to the word of God. And this is being brought to light. And I implore Mr. Goebel, I implore him to be on the right side of this when the light does bring everything out. Because it is cleansing, the light is, and it will, trust me, it will come out, and it will cleanse this filth that has been going on. Anything that is done secretive, that cannot be said to a general public, is automatically wrong. When things are done in secret and behind closed doors, it is already wrong, especially when you have meetings that are supposed to be public and a board of education that is supposed to be public. Anything done in secret is automatically wrong, and we should know better than that. And so I also want to be clear on this too. Mr. Goebel has been invited on this show. I have invited him personally to do a one-on-one with me so that he feels comfortable and that he will not feel like he's ganged up on by Alan and I. We are preachers with a punch, so we do like to hit. And so we want him to be comfortable and come on the show and and talk to his constituency, because right now he has not talked to his constituency. And we want to be able to do that. So, Mr. Goebel, you're watching this because I'm going to tag you in this so that you know we are going to bring your constituency on until you come on and start answering to them. We want you to be right here and answer. Now, Mr. Goebel has invited me onto his podcast with Reverend Cleveland. I have no desire for that. I'm not the one that's being questioned here. It's Mr. Goebel. He needs to come on and he needs to answer. And frankly, I'm not sure that any conservatives listen to that podcast because it is heavily leftist and is dominated by leftists like Odell Cleveland. So we're not interested in hearing the same old Democrat talking points over and over and over again. My last question for you, Maria, before we run out of time. Do you trust Bill Goebel as your current representative sitting in that seat? He's at least sitting in that seat right now. Do you trust him to carry your voice on that school board?
As of right now, I do not, because of, again, everything that we just discussed earlier. And it hurts me actually to say that, because we're all humans. We all make mistakes. And I think that Mr. Goebel has an opportunity to make it right. The best thing that he could do right now is to humble himself and repent.
Yes.
And then resign from the school board and say, I made a mistake and I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I've hurt this community, and I'm sorry that I hurt Mr. Logan and the Republican Party, and I resign from this seat. And then they can start over with the whole nomination. I think that would be the best thing for Mr. Goebel to do. And if he were to do that, I think that he would find that the community would forgive him, because we are Christians, and we're told to forgive those who trespassed against us. And I would absolutely extend an olive branch to Mr. Goebel if he would do that. So I pray that he and his wife will really do some soul searching and realize that they made a mistake. It's okay. We're humans. We make mistakes.
Sure.
So let's just right the wrong and do the right thing from this point forward. And that's what I hope and pray for.
100% agree. I do. And I will also just to wrap us up here, Mr. Goebel, look, I know these people. I worked with them for 20 years. I know these people. Or I should say, let's just be accurate, 17 years. You're useful to them right now. But when they are done with you, you're going to be left in the wake. And you're going to be a man without a country. And you're going to be a man without friends. And it is time, sir, that you realize these people are not on your side. They are not your friends. You are a means to an end for them. And when they are finished with you, they won't have any need for you anymore. Been there, done that. Got the t-shirt to prove it, sir. It's time for you to stand on the right side, regardless of what happens, even if it did alienate you from everybody for the rest of your life. Be on the side of the Lord. Joshua asked the question, who is on the Lord's side? It's not whose side is the Lord on, but who is on the Lord's side. And actions like this does not put anyone on the Lord's side. So we implore you, Mr. Goebel, it's time to do what's right. And until then, our door is open here on Carolina Conservatives Preachers with a Punch. We want to hear from you. And until then, we want to hear from District 3 constituents and how they feel about this situation. Mr. Goebel, come on and talk to your people. Talk to your constituency. It's time. We welcome you. Folks, this has been Carolina Conservatives Preachers with a Punch. Maria, you have just been a breath of fresh air and just a lovely guest, and we are so glad to have you. And we look forward to having you again really, really soon. And I appreciate you being on with us today.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nathan. I appreciate it.
God bless everybody. Be back with us again very soon. We are Carolina Conservatives Preachers with a Punch, and hopefully we'll get Alan back on with us again real soon. And but y'all be praying for him. He's fighting the good fight to become Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, and we support him 100% on this show. God bless everybody. We'll see you again soon.